Choosing the one thing is easy. Protecting it for 90 days, that's where leadership actually shows up. Every leader I know starts the quarter with clarity, but we end it with reacting to urgency, emails, meetings, and everybody else's priority. I've learned that the one thing doesn't fail because it was wrong. It fails because it isn't protected. So in this episode, I'm going to show you how I protect that one thing for a full quarter, full 90 days, how I decide what interrupts it and what doesn't, and how I lead without becoming rigid or unavailable. If priorities keep getting hijacked, this episode's going to change the way how you lead the rest of this quarter. Welcome to the Leaders Leading Leaders podcast. I am your host, John Espinosa. If your goal is to build high-performance teams, I'm going to use my 20 years of leadership experience to share what I've learned. Let's get into the content for today. And today I'm excited because this episode is one of the things that I really struggled with as a new leader, for those new leaders out there. And as I begin to get into middle leadership, middle manager, and then in the senior ranks, it even become more of a reality that the one thing, it's always going to be under attack, okay? So it's not the fact that we lose focus. It just gets taken. Think of all the things that the distractions out there. In our personal lives, we have tons of distractions. We have this little device right here. Email, instant messaging, notifications, dings going off. So think about it from a business sense, from a leadership sense. We have urgent requests. I don't know how many times today that I'm in a meeting. I was doing interviews today. I was sitting on an interview panel and I'm getting urgent requests. I'm getting requests for information. I'm getting, hey, can you join this call? I'm getting a phone call. So my bad. I should have silenced all that. But those are the things that continue and will continue. We can't shut those off. Even if I quieted and minimized my screen, when I open it back up, they are going to be there. The other thing, we get good ideas. All the time, people have good ideas. Our teams are full of great people. And those great people, those high performers, guess what? They have good ideas. We can't address all good ideas at one time. So sometimes it's not a no, it's just a not right now. And the last thing, other people's priorities become ours. And when we allow that to happen, we allow that one thing to fall to the wayside. And it's unfair to us as the leaders, and it's especially unfair to our team. So the one thing, it normally doesn't get killed by failure. It gets killed by distraction, all the distractions that we have. So one question that I have for you, what usually derails you from your priorities? Is it those emergencies that we're always dealing with? Is it people? Or you're second guessing? Because that, it can stall, preventing things from getting in the way right off the bat. So one thing that I want to talk about is the shift of realizing that protection is our job. So protection is not selfish. Protection is not rigidity, and it's our responsibility as a leader. If you don't protect your priorities, no one else will. So why do leaders absorb pressure? We have to absorb the pressure so our teams can stay focused. Think of it as like Captain America, and you have that shield. There's things coming at you all the time. Your team, there's those priorities. There's especially other people's priorities. There's the emergency calls. There's the urgent things that you got to get done, and you're just blocking them. That's what you're doing as a team lead, as a manager, and as a business owner. We're keeping away all the things from our team so that they can do the job that they were hired to do. Why does this feel uncomfortable? Because it's hard to say no. I hated to tell people not right now. So one of the most important things that I had to learn was it's not a no, a hard no. It's just a no right now. Let's put that on the back burner. I got really, really good at what we used to call parking lot. And I learned this from my instructional background, but we would create a parking lot for questions that may be off topic or that we were going to cover later. But what that did was it allowed the asker of the question to feel as if they were heard and to know that we were going to get to their question, their comment, or their inquiry. So the next thing that I want to talk about is how I actually protect the rules, because this is something that, for the longest time, I relied on my discipline. And in the end, even there was cracks in that. So I rely on rules. And these rules that we're going to get ready to go over are the rules that I try to make, I adhere to. They're rules. And the first one is a decision rule. What are your decision rules around what gets blocked, what gets, avoided? Because what automatically gets a not this quarter means that that's one less thing that your team has to determine what the priority is. Because what happens in organizations, especially in larger organizations, is, hey, I used to work with Sue, and now she switched the organization. So instead of going up the chain to my manager and then over to their manager and down to Sue, I'm just going to reach right out and talk to Sue. But what we really need to do is we need to say, that's not a priority this quarter. For this quarter, we have our one thing, and that's what we're going to focus on. Just a quick pause in our episode. This might be exactly what you need to hear. If you're currently leading a team, or you want to lead a team, and you're spending your days putting out fires, you're not failing, you're just stuck. Because when everything feels urgent, nothing actually improves. And over time, that starts to chip away at our confidence as a leader. I've led teams under pressure for years, and firefighting isn't about effort, it's about those missing leadership systems. When expectations are clear and ownership is real, our teams, they stop reacting and they start solving problems without us. So if you're ready to lead instead of react, click on the link below, book a call, check out our consulting programs. All right, back to the episode. The other decision rule that I make sure is, what requires revisiting the one thing before I say yes. So the priority, I got to make sure that that's the priority. Now, be careful here because it's a slippery slope. But as we visit the one thing before we say yes, what we say yes to better fit within the scope of that one thing. Let's talk about calendar rules. What gets scheduled? When we take on new meetings, when we're taking on maybe a project and it doesn't fit in that one thing, what gets scheduled first? You have to make sure that that one thing is priority when it gets scheduled. If it doesn't get scheduled, it doesn't get done. So you can't put it on the back burner, the one thing, and expect for things to get done. So schedule that first. What doesn't get timed this quarter? Look at your calendar. Every 90 days, I look at my recurring meetings. I don't know about you, but I get meetings snuck on my calendar. I'll get a reoccurring meeting and I may be an attendee. I may not be the organizer, but guess what? Now it's on my calendar for the next 6 months. So every quarter I take a look at my calendar and I let them know. I just don't delete the meeting, but I reach out to the organizer and I say, hey, listen, this is the priority this month. If you need me, I can attend 1 or 2 meetings, but I can't reoccur. I can't attend the reoccurring meeting. And then what meetings change because of the priority? So you may have a meeting that is just a quick tag up. Maybe that meeting needs to extend because the priority, it's due in 90 days. So or repurposing meetings. That's the other thing that I recently did was we took a meeting. It was a sub-team meeting. We are onboarding some new employees and we turned that meeting more into like a lunch and learn to where we're going through processes. We're going through those tasks that the new individuals on the team, they're going to be responsible for. So the senior individual on the team, guess what? It gives them the opportunity to get everybody onboarded. But we took an existing meeting and we repurposed that because the one thing, the priority now is onboarding those individuals in the next 90 days. And then the last framework that I use is the problems that I personally engage in. What problems are you going to engage in? Because if you're engaging in your firefighting, this is what I call the firefighter. You're putting out all the fires. Well, if the one fire that's going to burn down everything else, the priority isn't put out, it doesn't have your full attention, guess what? It's going to spread. So what problems are you personally going to engage with? And this is the hard one. What are you going to refuse to solve right now? Not that you're going to solve it later, but in this next quarter, what are you going to delay? Okay, so rules, they remove the negotiation. And negotiation is where focus dies. So for us, we have to make sure that we install those rules. Create rules for yourself. Those were just examples of rules that I use, but write down those rules that are going to keep you, the guardrails, keep you keep the main thing the main thing. So let's talk quickly about what the difference is between emergencies and distractions, because this is where leaders, we got to lean in hard. Emergencies, remember, emergencies threaten the survival or the safety of our teams, of our businesses, of our culture. Distractions, for me, they feel urgent, but they're not going to change the outcome. Okay, so there are many times where we feel something is an emergency, and I would encourage you to go back to the rules. Does it need to be solved now? Because take for my example of onboarding. I got a couple different projects that this quarter were on our plate. I tracked those projects, but the main thing was onboarding employees. So what I thought was an emergency, an external request that I thought was an emergency we needed to address, I quickly learned we didn't have the expertise to address that request. Why? Because those individuals are onboarding. So this is just an example of where I thought something was an emergency, and in the end, it was really a distraction. It's not going to change the outcome. The request is still going to be there. It just took a simple email saying, hey, we're changing some processes and procedures within our organization. We will get back to you in the next couple months to address your request. What that allowed them to feel like they were seen, acknowledged, and it allowed us to keep the main thing the main thing. Because the cost of treating everything as critical means that our focus is divided. And when we have diluted attention, we are going to have diluted results. That's the importance of keeping the priority, because if everything interrupts the main thing, this is the lesson that I learned is maybe the one thing was never the priority. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But we're going to talk about some ways that I keep that are practical and that are honest ways that I delegate, I delay, or I do. So these are my 3 Ds. And when we talk about this, like what are things that, let's start with the delay. And there are things, good ideas again, back to those good ideas or things that are already on your plate that because you need to maintain focus on that priority or the team needs to focus on that priority, you're just going to naturally need to delay. There are also things that you're going to need to delegate. You're going to need to create capacity. And when we create that capacity, sometimes we have to delegate the things that feel comfortable to us. I liken this to those easy wins. We hold on to things, and I find myself in this situation where I hold on to things that I get quick wins on. But in the end, when I look at what I can delegate, those quick wins, those are the things that I need to let go of. So work on delegating tasks earlier than it feels comfortable to do so. And then there are simply things that we're going to have to do. There are quarterly things that we can't move that are, either reports that are our responsibilities, decisions that we're going to have to make, or tasks that are inherently part of our job. As managers, there's things like time cards, there's things like performance reviews, right? So for your organization, there are probably things that you can't delegate, you can't delay, so you're going to have to do. But figure out what those things are. And then what I want you to do is, for those things that you have to delegate or that you have to delay, I need us to normalize the tension, because you're going to feel guilty. I did. I felt guilty pushing on work to somebody else, but in the end, it created capacity in my day, and it gave them the opportunity to grow. The other thing is the fear of missing out, FOMO. I have FOMO. Like, if I'm not part of that project, that's something that I get excited about. I really want to attend those meetings and be part of that project. Guess what? I delegate, right? Those are those good feels, those quick wins. Those are an example of something that we need to delegate before we feel comfortable. So one thing that, here, leadership, it isn't about doing everything well. It's choosing what we're willing to disappoint. And maybe disappoint's a strong word, but that's that guilt. That's that guilt that I don't want to disappoint anybody. But in the end, it's our job. Remember that shield again. That's the shield that we need to bump everything else off of. And you're going to disappoint somebody. Maybe they need something in the next 90 days, and you are not willing to let the priority be bothered or people be distracted. So you may disappoint them, but in the end, what you're doing is you're protecting the one thing. You're protecting that priority. So how do you communicate? How do you communicate the one thing so it sticks? And here we have to shift from us to the team. So repetition over novelty. And I say the same things. I've gotten really good at saying the same things in different ways. This is kind of like the Goofy effect. I don't know if you've been to Disney World or Disneyland, but there's this rule, and it's called the Goofy rule. I don't exactly know where it came from, but it's something that reminds me that I do need to repeat the same thing, just in different ways. So this is how the story goes. You're driving into Disney, and it's a massive parking lot. And for Disney World, at least that's where I've been, in Magic Kingdom, they have all of the parking lots. They're coded, they're color coded, and they have a character assigned. This particular parking lot is the Goofy parking lot. So you drive in and you see signs for the Goofy parking lot. You park in your parking space, and guess what? Right on the cement there, Goofy, whatever your parking number is. So I normally take a picture of that. Then on the sign, on the light poles, there's another indicator of you're in the Goofy lot, maybe lot 6 or section 6 of the Goofy parking lot. Then the bus comes and picks you up to take you to the front gate because you're pretty far out there. What happens? There's a picture of Goofy painted on the bus. You walk in the bus, the bus driver says, "Welcome, you parked in the Goofy parking lot." As you exit the bus, have a glorious day, have the best day ever, you're parked in the Goofy parking lot. 7 times. 7 times you're reminded in different ways, through signage, through the color coding, through pictures, through audible cues, that you are parked in the Goofy parking lot. There's a rule that says it takes about 7 times for us to make it stick. So get good at saying the same thing just in different ways. Another way to communicate the one thing so it sticks is tying decisions back to that one thing. And this is important. This is an important leadership characteristic that I see really good leaders do. When decisions are made, especially when things are said no to or deflected, they're delayed. Why that decision protects the main thing. It's important. Just not more important, than this quarter's focus. And sometimes it's hard to hear. It's hard for us to say, but in the end, it keeps the main thing the main thing. So you might be asking yourself, John, what happens when the one thing needs to change? Well, this is something that added maturity and credibility in my leadership journey, because sometimes changing focus is appropriate. Sometimes I get it wrong. The priority never really was the priority. When we are catching ourselves avoiding what really is the priority, that's when things need to change. This should rarely occur. I caution it. I almost don't even coach on it. But the fact that I bring this up is I've made mistakes. I've made, bad decisions. I'm not perfect, and I will admit it. So changing the main thing sometimes needs to happen, but it should be very, very often. And I would even say probably early in the process as you possibly can, because changing priorities, it should feel expensive. Because if it doesn't, guess what? You're going to do it often. So I hope that you've learned how to protect that main thing, how to get your Captain America shield up. The challenge that I have for you this week is decide what you're going to stop protecting so you can finally protect what matters. So this was the second episode in our 3-part series of deciding what the main thing is, protecting the main thing, right? And the final challenge is going to be starting it. So most of us, we start it too big. So in this next episode, I'm going to show you how to start so small that momentum becomes inevitable. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, do me a favor, click on that podcast. It'll keep you informed. It'll keep us in the know to let people know exactly, or let us know exactly what you like. Comment, share, do all those things. You'd be doing us a huge favor. I believe in you. Go be great. We'll talk to you on the next episode. Bye-bye.